Hello, I'm David Downing. I'm the president of Meeple Solutions. I want to talk to you today about a safer at home outreach program that we're working on. So, first of all, who is Meeple Solutions? So, we can go here to the Googles and type in Meeple Solutions, and that will take you to the front one is our webpage, which has a lot of good information about us. That's where we're going to go visit here soon. Then you can also go to our Facebook page. That's a good way to find information about us, goings on, follow us there. It's a good way to message us and get a hold of us. So in this video, I'm going to talk about who Meeple Solutions is, what we do. I'm going to talk about our Safer at Home outreach program, try to convince you that it's really easy and affordable to get in the modern board game, its benefits, and I'm going to go over some store recommendations for you. If you'd prefer to read that information yourself, you can go here and you can check that information out. Otherwise, I'll walk you through it here in this video. That'll take about half an hour. Okay, so here we're on the front page of Meeple Solutions. Here's the link to our outreach program. So we're a 501c3 charity nonprofit organization registered with the IRS. We're local here in DFW. We've been around in some shape, form, or another for about 10 years. Our mission is all about building community through positive gameplay, and that's what we really believe in. You'll find us in conventions. You'll find us running campaigns like this online. We host some events. We've partnered up with other institutions. We've gone into children's hospitals. We've been out with some of the Girl Scouts retreats. We've done a lot of stuff because we think board gaming is important. If you think that, we're doing interesting work, you can support us, whether financially or there's some other ways here. So you can go and click and read through and learn about who Meeple Solutions is. What I want to talk about is, let me go back up to the top. So we have the Safer at Home outreach campaign. And so we think that we can help you because there are games you can play with your family that would ease your cabin fevers. And we also think that we can help local business by connecting the resources that they have with your needs. So what I mean by the Safer at Home outreach is I think that modern board gaming is really cool. I think that it's very powerful. I think that sitting down with your family at a table, humans sitting across from each other, I think can do a lot of good. And it's a common mistake that people who play board games are really interested in the board games themselves. And it's the board games that really add value and enrichment to our lives. And that's a common mistake. The value of the board game is sitting down at a table with another person. And it's really the interactions with the person that are valuable because these are authentic memories and experiences that we can have with each other. And the board games really are just a vehicle for that social interaction, an avenue for us to have something to do instead of just sitting down at the table and staring at each other. It's easy to run out of things to talk about. And if you're like me, you probably remember playing games as a kid like Monopoly or Risk or Stratego was a favorite of mine. Or, while I have some good memories and, sometimes some of those games maybe ran a little long, board gaming has changed a lot. It's different than what you might remember. Just like TV and movies are different today than what you might have experienced as a kid, board games have really come a long way. And there have been literally thousands of board games that have been launched since the year 2000, hundreds just in the last year. And so I confidently believe that there is a board game for everyone. I don't think that there's people who like board games and people that don't like board games. I think everyone likes board games. The question is, which board game do you like? And have you found your board game yet? And, there's really so many different board games out there, such a wide range. Some of them take only a few minutes. Some of them can be done in half an hour. Some of them can be done in 3 hours. Some of them can be done in 5 minutes. Some take all day. You can find the right length that's appropriate for what you want. Some of these are strategy or tactical games. Some of them are narrative storytelling. Some of them are dexterity, and you get to fiddle with your hands. Really, they serve different purposes. Most of the games we remember as kids were competitive. We competed against each other. There's been an interesting segment of cooperative board games where you compete, the people at the table work together against the game, which is pretty interesting and is sometimes really good, for some of the young ones who get really competitive. So you may not realize that there's a lot of friendly local game stores around in our neighborhood. And I reached out to them and did a quick interview with each of them. Here's some of the advice they have. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I'd encourage you to go and look and see what your friendly local game stores are advising, during this time where we're spending a lot more time at home. And I put together a map of the friendly local game stores that have responded so far. I'll add more as they join in. And what I'd like you to do is look here and find your local game store. I live down in central Dallas, so this is my local one. And if you click on the green tab, it'll bring you up a picture, some information. This link we're going to go talk about in here in a few minutes. This is the rest of the interview with the game store and has some recommendations of which games would be really easy for someone to get into if they haven't been gaming before. And so if you look around, there's all these different stores that you can get into. And so take a look at that map. And beneath this map, I also just went ahead and put a grid of the stores that have responded to my interview. And you can see the about us about each of them, and I put a link to their recommendations and their ordering instructions here. Now, I want to address the elephant in that room, and that is, what about Amazon? I get it. I know that there's a lot of games available on Amazon. Sometimes they can deliver faster to your door. Sometimes they have more options. Sometimes they save you a few bucks, and that's okay. I would encourage you to shop local when you can. These stores are owned and operated by your neighbors. These are people that live in our community in Dallas, Fort Worth, and they employ people who are local here. And they're not only in the community, they're part of the community. They're also giving back to, Little Timmy's baseball league, and they're talking with you and forming a relationship with you to figure out what games you like and making recommendations. And when new games come out, they can tell you like, hey, I know you enjoyed this and this, but you didn't like this other one. I think this new game might fit your personality. And that's something that you don't get from something like Amazon. They also donate to charities like Meeple Solutions. And I think they're a positive force, is what I'm saying. So support them when you can. Now, I understand that sometimes money is tight and those few bucks might mean an extra meal. And so it's okay to use Amazon if you need to. I would encourage you, if you do, to use Smile.Amazon. That's Amazon's nonprofit sector, and they'll make donations on your behalf. Every time you make a purchase, Amazon will donate some money, and it doesn't take any money away from you. And here at Meeple Solutions, we have a very limited budget. We keep a very lean operation. We have no employees. I'm a volunteer, and I don't draw any salary at all. All of our money is going towards outreach campaigns like this, maintaining our website, advertising, going to conventions, and supporting the projects like when we went to the Girl Scouts or Ronald McDonald House or the Children's Hospital or things like that. And so I'm also going to ask you to help us keep our advertising budget low, to help share out this information if you find it useful. Things like sending it to your cousins, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, brothers, sisters. If you have a Facebook group for your local neighborhood, share it out on there. If you have an email list for the school, Nextdoor would be great. We're trying to reach people who haven't necessarily engaged with the board game community in the modern sense, and show them that there's this really affordable, really positive avenue to kind of focus your mind and focus on your mental health. And so help us share, please. Now, from here, I'm going to go through some of the store's interviews, and specifically, I'm going to look at the game recommendations they make for different people. And I'm going to show you some of the games. You can see I own one or two on the bookshelf behind me. If you'd like to read through these, you go to your local store, and you can look at that one. I'm going to go through and skim through a bunch of them. And so that's what I'll be spending the rest of the video on. Okay. So let's look at the first one here. So this is Brick House Games. They're in Garland. They have curbside pickup right now. This is information that's current as of April. Some of this stuff will be changing very soon, as some will have limited in-store hours as we slowly ramp up through the phases. So call or email or contact their Facebook pages of these stores for the most recent information. So I asked them about their current ordering process and how to get a hold of them. So that information will be on each store. I also asked 6 different categories. What if you had young kids at home? What about people with preteens? What if you have teenagers and young adults? What if you have a large family of mixed ages? What if there's just a couple people? Or what about solo play? And so I tried to capture the different things that might be happening in your different homes right now. And so looking here at Brick House, they have a lot of good recommendations. Let's see, I want to talk about this one right now, King of Tokyo. Let me look on my shelf here. I own this one personally. I think this is a quality game, King of Tokyo. And this is a game that I would recommend for if you liked Yahtzee and you thought it was fun throwing dice and you got something out of that. Imagine Yahtzee, but it was a good game that you can make decisions in. Let me open up this game box here. And so there's lots of dice with all kinds of symbols. They're very satisfying to throw. Each person plays as a monster, and you're trying to destroy Tokyo. And you do that by rolling the dice and re-rolling them as it might be to get, either attacks or, to get, energy that you could use to buy. Like there's different upgrades to make your monster different, to make them more powerful. And this is a game that's great with kids. It takes about half an hour. It's not a real brain burner. It's something you can have fun throwing dice at the table and see what happens. And it's pretty lighthearted. And I think there's some value to that. I think this is a fun game. It plays up to 6 people. I also like, Dice Forge, Stone Age, Betrayal at House. I think there's Pandemic. There's some other good ones here as well. Let's look at the Sci-Fi Factory. They have 2 locations in Lake Worth and Fort Worth. And so let's look at some of their recommendations. And so, like Pokemon Cooperative. Let's look at something that's kind of the opposite of King of Tokyo, and that's Mage Knight. So, where King of Tokyo is a lighthearted affair, something that you could play with, the kids, and that you get the whole family around the table and doesn't require a lot of thought. The opposite of that would be something like Mage Knight. And so Mage Knight is kind of an epic fantasy where you play a hero that's going across the lands and, defeating the bad guys and accomplishing quests. Interestingly, this one can play up to 4 players, but it also plays really good alone because you can play the hero going out on their quest and you can go accomplish your goals. And, it comes with these really nice figures. You can be this little green dragon man, or, you can be this elven knight. You can see they're kind of nicely painted in here. I think that's pretty fun. And then the map here is actually randomly generated, which is pretty cool. So there's these hexes, and they kind of fit together to play out the land. And there's different, forests and deserts and towns and castles. And there's all these tokens that represent the bad guys. And, there's all these cards that represent all the things your heroes can do and different actions and abilities. And so it's a fairly complex game. This one's going to take a few hours. So this one would be really for the type of person who enjoys an epic, like Lord of the Rings or something like that, wants to go play out, attacking these various cities in the land and trying to take care of things. The rule book's fairly thick. This is for someone who's not looking for something lighthearted, who's looking for something more involved. They can really sink their teeth in and really think about. And like I said, it works good all the way down to solo, which is pretty interesting. Okay. Let's look at Gen X Comics and Games there in Bedford. So, they recommend, I recommend Blue Orange Games here for a couple categories. I think that's a good recommendation. They make a wide range of games. And they make one of my favorites. This is King Domino. And that's kind of a play on words because you're making the kingdom out of dominoes. And so what I think is really great about this, you can see it's kind of a small box. I think it's great because it works really well with 2 players, but it works well with 4 players. I enjoy playing it as an adult, but kids enjoy playing it too. And so sometimes you get games that are like just for kids or games that are just for adults. I think this one's really cool because it works for both. Simple little rule book, easy to understand. One thing that I wanted to talk about too is with these rule books, just like you're watching a video right now of me explaining what games I think would be good, there are YouTube channels that'll teach you how to play these games, and they're really good. And so if you don't like reading the rule book, you can watch the video and see someone play through the game. And I think that makes it really easy to get started. And so, this is a nice little organized game. I appreciate games that are well organized in the box. And so like you take your little color a person, and then you take turns of like I pick a domino, you pick a domino. And what we're doing is we're picking these dominoes to build out our lands. And so let's say I picked this one first, then the other one picks one, then I pick this one. Well, I can put these together because that's going to grow out my forest. I could rotate it and put it this way too, because it's still growing out the forest. And so what I do is I'll grow out the different parts of my kingdoms. I'll score points based on how large they are and how many crowns I have. But it's interesting making decisions because it'll change the turn order. If I take a really good domino now, I'll get a worse domino later. And so there's some fun decisions to make. The game takes like 15 minutes, has a lot of replay value. It's won some good awards here, which were well deserved. I love this game. This is one of the first games I recommend to people new to the board game area, and you can see I still have it on my shelf. I still think it's a great game. I think you'll get a lot of mileage out of that. Let's look down at Friend and Foe Board Game Cafe in Plano. So this is a board game cafe, so they also have food there to order, and I believe they're doing game rentals too. Let's look at what they recommend. Let's see, I really like Blockus and Drop It, Ghost Fighting Treasure Hunters. There's King of Tokyo again. We see Pandemic. Let's talk about that one. I saw that on the recommendation earlier from another store. Pandemic is what's considered a classic of modern board games. There's been a lot of versions of it. So just like we had Risk and Monopoly that were classics of the older board game era, games like Pandemic and Settlers of Catan are kind of classics of modern board gaming. And so I have one of the expansions from this is Pandemic Iberia, which covers Spain and Portugal. But the base game version would be the entire world. And so this is a really cool game because it is cooperative. And I think that's interesting that you're not competing against each other. You're actually competing against the game itself. And so that allows you to kind of work together and make plans as you play your different people. And so you have your different little pawns that represent your little dudes that are out going along the map. And you know, each of the guys have slightly different powers. Like someone might be a little bit faster, but someone else might be able to build infrastructure, might be able to cure different. Because what's going on is you'll have a map. Again, my expansion is of Spain, but the base game is of the entire world. And so what'll happen is you will draw cards that have cities on them, and then that'll tell us where these little cubes go that represent disease. And then our little guys are going to go out and try to cure that disease. And as the disease spreads, things will get worse, but our guys' actions will try to make things better. And, we'll win as the good guys if we can cure these things, and we'll lose together if the disease gets out of control. That's a bit apropos of what's happening these days, but this is a very good classic game, a really good entry point. It's great for adults. It's also great for kids, especially ones who have trouble, winning or losing. You can do it together and work as a group to try to overcome the objective. And like I said, there's so many different versions of it. So after the base game, you can go with Iberia, which is a great one. There's Pandemic Legacy, which tells a whole story and the game changes. A lot of cool stuff there. Let's see. That's an interesting one, like The Mind here. This is an interesting game I have. This is a teeny tiny little game, a little quick one. This one's kind of neat because it plays with a whole bunch of different players. You can play 2 to 4, and all there is in here is a tiny little rulebook, and there's a bunch of cards that are numbered 1 to 99. And then, so some of the cards get set aside. You don't know which ones. And then I'll have some cards in my hand, and you'll have some cards in your hand. And then we'll take turns putting one card down at a time, but trying to put them down in order without skipping them. So I try to put down the lowest card, and then maybe I think I also have the second lowest card, so I go again. But then maybe I'll wait because I think you have the next lowest card, which sounds really easy, except you're not supposed to talk. And they're not supposed to communicate. It's supposed to be all like just looking in each other's eyes and seeing if you can trust the other person. It's a simple little game. It's more like some say it's more of an experience. It's like a little accomplishment to see if you guys can work together and read each other and understand each other, which isn't a huge game, but it's also cheap. It comes in a tiny little box. And so there's a good amount of fun in this little box. You can play in 15 to 20 minutes. Let's see. You know what? I also liked this one here, Tiny Epic Galaxies. Let's see. I think I have. Is it right here? And so this is a whole series of Tiny Epic games, and to be honest, I really enjoy a lot of them. I think I have most of them by this company, and they all are legitimate tiny. They come with, their little game pieces, and there's some cards that kind of make out the board. And then you have your little player mat, and that's where you kind of upgrade up these tracks, and you get different points, and you send out your spaceships to do different things based on what you roll on the die, and you try to get to these different planets and add them to your section. It's a fun little game. You can play it alone, or you can play it with 4 people, I believe. This is a great series of tiny epics. There's Tiny Epic Galaxies, Tiny Epic Kingdoms, Tiny Epic Western, Tiny Epic Quest. Quest is a good one. A lot of good games there. They're all pretty affordable. All right, let's talk about Common Ground games. So let's look at their recommendations. This is in Dallas. So we see, I like Carcassonne. My Little Scythe is pretty great. Code Names we've seen a lot. Azul, really like those. King of Tokyo again, Seven Wonders. Let's talk about Patchwork. I want to talk about that one right now. Yeah, I have that one right. I've gotten a lot of play about this one. This is King Domino is really high on my list that I introduced to groups, but Patchwork is interesting because it's only 2-player. You can't play with 3 or more. The theme doesn't appeal to everybody. I mean, literally, this game is about building a quilt. But, my girlfriend and I play this together quite a bit. It's really quick to set up, and it's really quick to play. You just have these, we call them polyominoes, these different shapes. There's all these kind of like Tetris-y shapes, except there's, a million different weird shapes. And then what you're doing is these are the pieces of your quilt, and you're trying to sew them onto and make a large quilt. And so you have your board right here, and so you start trying to sew on these pieces, and you're trying to fit them together. And so, you go one at a time. I take a piece, and then, someone else takes a piece, and then I get to take a piece again. I'll fit it right in there. But you can see these pieces have amounts of buttons that they cost. And so there's the amount of buttons and the amount of time. And so these buttons here that you get from them are kind of your currency that you use to buy new pieces. And then you only have so much time to build your quilt. So it's who can build the biggest, best quilt with the buttons that they have given that amount of time. And you go back and forth with your partner, and there's kind of that, well, if I take this piece, will they take that piece? Will this one still be available? And it's a really fun little game, really simple rules. Really enjoy playing Patchwork quite a bit. This was really high on my recommendations. So I encourage you to check that out. Put that in the stack. All right, let's keep looking. So Boomerang Comics and Games, they're in Louisville. Let's see. I like the Catan Junior. I'll get you into Catan later. Let's Ticket to Ride's a good one. Let's talk about Splendor for right now. I like this game, Splendor. I have it here on my shelf. And so Splendor, you play as a gem trader. And what you're trying to do is, make the best network of gems. This game has some pretty satisfying components. There's these game pieces right here. They feel like light poker chips, but they're pretty satisfying. These represents your gems. Like here's my emeralds and my rubies and whatnot. And then, you'll buy these cards that represent your mines. So this is a mine that mines out onyxes. But in order to get the onyx mine, you got to spend 2 diamonds, 2 sapphires, and 1 ruby on it. And once you get that, then you'll own this card, and you'll have an onyx available every turn. These are very small ones, and you can see there's blank worth of points. But once you get a few small mines, you'll have the production. You can start getting some medium-level mines. You see that one costs 6 diamonds, but it also gets you 3 points in addition to generating diamonds. And then later you can get the larger mines that, will do all kinds of crazy things and will be worth lots of points, but, they're pretty expensive. And so there's some decisions to make of getting larger mines versus getting shorter mines. Cat's going to join us here. And, you can make those decisions, Sometimes you want to get a lot of small ones to work up. Sometimes you get a few small ones, try to jump to the medium ones. There's a lot of replay value. There's also these different lords you can try to appease by having the right mines that they like to get extra points. And you're kind of making an engine is what you're doing. Small investments lead to larger investments, and then you can end up with the most points. This isn't a real complex game. It's a pretty simple one, but good quality components, has some pretty fluid gameplay, and I think most people will enjoy that. Let's keep scrolling down. See, there's Seven Wonders recommended again. Codenames recommended again. King Domino recommended again. Let's look at Doc's Comics and Games in Frisco. So they have, there's the King of Tokyo, the Carcassonne. We've seen Codenames recommended a few times. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I have Codenames here on my shelf. I actually have several versions of it. See, I have 5 versions of this game. Having 5 versions of a game should tell you something about its quality. This one specifically is Codenames XXL, which literally there's another Codenames box that's just much smaller. It's the exact same game. All they did was print it bigger, which if you're a glasses wearer like me is nice. And so you play as groups. 2 groups of spies, and this game requires a group. So this one's really good for if you have a large family at home. It works for all ages because we're working on a team. And so it'll be the red team versus the blue team. So you need at least 4 people. You can't play with 3, but you can play with 4 all the way to 8 or more. And so you'll have all these cards that have words on them. And then you'll lay out the cards on this 5x5 grid. And then one person will be the clue giver. So they know which of the words count as red team words and which words count as blue team words. And they'll try to give you some kind of clue that will let you know which words go with which team. And then the other people on your team who can't see the card will try to guess. And then, you'll put out whether it was red or a blue. And there's really tons and tons of words in here, so it doesn't get old. So let's say, for example, these 2 words were out. Spot and Ray. And let's say I'm the clue giver, and based on the little grid as they're all laid out on the table, I can see these are both red words. I'm going to try to get my teammate to guess it. So I'll give you a clue and I'll say, okay, team, the clue is laser. That's for 2 words. Laser 2. And they'll look at all the different words that are on the board, and they'll try to figure out, okay, I think Spot might go with laser and Ray might go with laser. And then they'll make some guesses, and we'll see if they work. So there's a lot of wordplay here. It works for all ages. There's so many words that it's a billion combinations. A lot of replay value, really fun. Works good with kids, with adults. It works good in parties with your family. This is a game I think we'll get to the table quite a bit. Really a popular game for a good reason. All right, let's look at the multiverse in Bedford. Let's see. They also recommend things like Catan Jr. I think D&D is fun. Ticket to Ride. Let's look at Ticket to Ride. We've seen that recommended before. Ticket to Ride is considered one of the classics of modern board gaming, right up there with Pandemic. And so, get this. Here's my Ticket to Ride. I've owned this game for over 15 years, and I've gotten so much gameplay out of it. And really, I think that's something that's special about board games. I spent like $40 on this game back in like 2003 or something like that. And if I think about the number of hours of entertainment I've gotten out of that, not just myself, but with other people, man, that means I've paid pennies per hour. If we compare that to a movie, you spend $10 just for yourself to get 2 some odd hours of entertainment. That it's gone. It's over. You don't get to rewatch it again without paying more. But, board games really just continue to provide value. I've played this so many times. You can see my box is starting to get worn from so many times that I've played this. Not a very complicated rule book. Pretty small. This is the base game of Pandemic. So it has this map. This is just part of it. It folds all the way out. Map of the United States. There's other maps for other parts of the world. So the different expansions. This plays 5 players. So you pick up your different colored trains and pick which one you want to be. And what I like about this game is turns are really fast. It's not like you take your turn and you have to wait 10 minutes doing nothing before it eventually goes around the table and, your loved ones take their turns. It goes around like this. It just keeps going. So there's not a lot of downtime. I really like that about this game because on your turn, you only get to do one thing. Now you have 3 options of what to do, but you only get to do one of them on each turn. So you can either put trains down on the map. Let's say you want to go from Los Angeles to San Francisco. So you could put 3 trains down. But you could only put trains down if you had the cards. So if you didn't have the cards to put the trains down, instead of putting trains down, you could pick up cards. And so there will be some of these colored cards down on the table for you to select. And you could pick up, some orange or pink or black or whichever ones you want. Now, ultimately, you're going to need the cards because you can see, for example, to go from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you either need 3 yellow cards or 3 pink cards. And if you had those, then you could play it. Now, the whole point of the game is to get points. And so you get points by completing tickets. And so, you get 11 points if you could connect the cities of Winnipeg and Little Rock, versus if you could go all the way from Vancouver to Montreal, you get 20 points if you can get the trains all the way there. So at the end of the game, we'll look at all the trains that we have down, and we'll see who got points for which tickets and who wins. And so on your turn, you're looking at, okay, where am I trying to go from here to there? Okay, what cards do I need? Do I have the cards set down trains now? Okay. Or do I see some cards I want to pick up? And so you'll have to make one decision on your turn. Then you can be thinking about it during the other people's turns. So it's very fluid and fast moving. Each game plays a little bit different because you're going to different locations. You're trying to figure out the puzzle on this map of all these different locations. And you can see it's a pretty bright, colorful map. For the young ones, that'll help a little bit with some geography, help with some planning and some math. This is a fun game, not too complicated. And like I said, if you really enjoy the base games, lots of expansions for a game like Ticket to Ride. It's won some good awards over the years, deservingly so. That's why you've seen it recommended more than one time here. It's like Betrayal at House on the Hill, which I like. Catan's a classic. Scythe. Some other information here that we can look at. Let's go down to Darkhound Game Center here in Mansfield. We have some recommendations from them. We see King Domino again. Games like My Little Scythe again. Potion Explosion. That's a fun one. Let's look at something really small for a change, like Boss Monster. This is a really good simplistic game, not too complicated, doesn't require too much thought, kind of random, but kind of fun. You play as the boss monster, actually of a dungeon. It kind of represents like an old school video game. You see the rules, very simple here. And what you're doing is you play as one of these bosses, like Cerebellus or Draculord or King Croak, and you try to build a dungeon. So here's like a boulder ramp or dizzy gas hallway, and you try to put these together to build a successful dungeon. That way, whenever the bad people come after you, some people would call them heroes, they'll come out and they'll try to, these mages and clerics and fighters and thieves will try to come through your dungeon. Hopefully your dungeon can stop them. And the person who defeats the most heroes will be the most successful boss monster. So that's a really simple card game for 2 to 4 people. Goes pretty fast, pretty simple, not a lot of thought, but still can be fun. And so we've gone through a lot of recommendations here. We also have Collected in Fort Worth. They prefer you call or message them so they can have a conversation with you. You can see that there's just a lot of examples out there on what to do. And so I truly believe there's a board game out there for everyone. You just got to find the one that's right for you. Talk to your friendly local game stores. They can give you recommendations. If this video has helped you at all, then I would encourage you to share out our information and help us spread it around so that we are not spending our advertising dollars. If you could share it out on Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, email it to friends, families, email lists, that would really help us out. Communicate with your friendly local game stores. Hopefully you make a recommendation. Hopefully this video helped you, and I hope you try out modern board gaming. I sincerely think there's something there for you. Also check us out, Meeple Solutions, and you can see how you can support our efforts and the kind of things that we're doing. Play games, stay safe.